Phew, Goldilock Bears podcast with Vincent Cloud.
John Nemitz.
And David Lauer.
And this is a show where we talk about loves and hates and indifferences. Or I'm kind of more torn. I don't know. John, you mentioned indifference probably isn't the right word for for it. It was more like what was your word?
Oh, I don't remember.
Well, on the
And
website, a few GoldilockBears.com, it's listed as Maz. Which again isn't correct because I could feel a lot for my indifferences and then
ambivalences.
ambivalence. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's closer.
Our loves, hates, and ambivalences. Yeah. It's
Mhm.
not like we have this on t-shirts already. We could change the word.
Uh,
Anyways. Anyways, before we do any of that though, we like to talk about old topics in a segment called Deja Vu. Go ahead, John.
yeah, I stumbled across a movie this last week called Xanadu, featuring many songs by ELO. Have you seen it, Dave?
Um, it was on TV once, and I watched like 15 minutes of it, and it was so good that I stopped watching because I'm like, it was so corny and so good. I enjoyed it so much. I'm like, I have to stop watching because I know if I watch the entire movie, I'm gonna hate it because it's probably gonna be this corny for an hour and a half long, and I would hate it. But just like the 15 minutes was enough of the corn, and it was just like it was like Olivia Newton-John's got a really good voice. She's like singing and dancing. And I'm like, oh, this is good. I'm like, how is this not a hit? Like Grease was a hit. That came out like 4 years prior or something like that, or 3 years prior. I'm like, I can't believe this movie wasn't like insanely popular. But it was super corny. Like I know if I rewatched it, I would probably hate it and I would think it's the worst thing ever. The song by ELO in it, I don't really even care for it. It's
Well,
definitely not
there's like
ELO.
multiple songs. Like Jeff Lynne
Oh,
wrote a
really?
bunch of the music, and yeah, ELO performed a bunch of it.
I thought they just had one song in there. Now I want
No,
to watch the whole thing.
yeah.
Are people on roller skates and like singing and shit? Or is that like
Yeah.
the live play, maybe? I don't know.
No, it's in the movie too.
Oh,
Like
okay.
the plot is that they're opening up like a roller skate dance club music venue kind of thing.
As one did.
Hmm.
Oh, and then Dave, you sent me that link of Kingpin when that song comes on, Showdown. And
Yeah.
yes, it works so good for that scene,
Oh yeah.
especially when Bill Murray's going like shaking his hands like he's scared. Oh, that yeah, that whole part, that movie's made kind of from that last act, and it's all Bill there. And I didn't know ELO was helping that experience. It's great.
How many other experiences have they helped? And we had no idea.
That's true. Yeah. You mentioned Dr. Evil making out with Frau Barbicida. That helped a lot. All right. Should we get the show started? Someone needs to start. Dave, I think.
Sure. I'm gonna start with my hate. And my hate is a very simple hate. It's tater tots. Tater tots are the worst version of potatoes. Like any other type of potatoes are good, I think. I love mashed potatoes, baked potatoes, fried potatoes, French fries are great. Hash browns are awesome. Potato pancakes, I'm kind of a fan of,
Hmm.
but tater tots are the worst. And it's like we've been subjected to tater tots like our whole life. I feel like it's like a little bit of PTSD from like our childhood cafeteria where you're like, oh, tater tots again. Great. It's just like, and I looked it up and it turns out that tater tots are like the cheapest form of potato because when they make French fries, they cut off like the ends of the potato and all of those throwaway bits they keep those throwaway bits and then they mash them together and make tater tots out of them. So it kind of explains why tater tots are the worst.
But
All right,
mashed potatoes are good.
Well, mashed potato contains all of the potato, not just the throwaway end parts.
but consider this. You have a ketchup bottle with the pointy top. You stick it in the tater tot, and then you squirt it. So you make like a little combo with a tater tot with ketchup in the middle. I mean,
I've never heard of that. Oh my
It's like a
gosh.
jelly donut with potatoes and ketchup.
all right. What about?
Oh my gosh.
There's definitely
Okay. All right.
kinds of
Well, hey,
potatoes I
what
like
about
less than tater tots. Like au gratin. Those are kind of, eh.
I like those.
oh, okay.
All right. What were you saying, Vince?
Oh, my earphones unplugged, so I kind of missed what you guys were saying. Oh, I was gonna mention Napoleon Dynamite, where it's like, you gonna eat your tots? I wore
yeah.
that shirt. I wore that shirt with that quote.
That was like the high watermark for tater tots. Like, they never got any better than that.
I don't know, man. Tater tots is kind of emerging on the fast food marketplace. Domino's are serving hash browns with like, nacho and shit on hash browns. And then Toppers has a tater tot pizza, you know.
Tater tot hot dish is a staple of Minnesota cuisine.
You don't like it, but it is a staple, right?
And I feel like these food companies are just trying to push these tater tots at us because they're all just like the waste product. And the people who are selling the French fries are also selling the tater tots. So they're just like, hey, take this. Like, we'll sell them to you on the cheap. And then the restaurants, they sell them for the same price as the fries. And you're like, hey, you can have either or. And, you cook them the same and they just deep fry them. But the only way that, like, you can eat French fries, like, just put some salt on them, maybe some ketchup, and they're great. Like, tater tots, it's like, you got to cover them, like, melt some cheese on it, put some chili on it, put some buffalo sauce or some blue cheese. And
Put a pizza under it.
yeah. Make a casserole under it. Like, you gotta really doctor those things up to make them edible.
All right. Well,
But,
you know what? Oh, go ahead, John.
on the other hand, that means like if you get them like as a side on the restaurant, they're gonna have like some fun spices and stuff on it. Maybe some Cajun, maybe some Lowry's. Whereas
That's a good point. Like, if you go to Taco John's, they have like the potato olays. Those things are incredible.
Yeah.
So, like, it's tater tots could be good. Like, Taco John's has figured it out. Why can't everybody else figure it out? Is it just the seasoning and then you cut the tater tot in half? Like,
that could be that. So yeah, they have more surface area to volume, so they maybe are crispier than
Yes.
standard issue tot.
Yeah, because I feel like the tater tot, it's crispy on the outside and then it's just like mush on the inside. Or it's just mush all the way if you don't cook it long enough. Or if you overcook it, then it's just all like crunch.
I like the Olays thing. I mean, because I love Olays. So, and yeah, that has to be considered. Okay, well, so if tater tots are the byproduct of French fries, is that what you were saying, right? Then fucking potato Olays are the byproduct of tater tots. It's fine. It's just fine. And there's nothing wrong with eating the offshoot of something. Look at Wendy's. Dave Thomas saw that some burgers were being thrown out because they weren't being sold or whatever. And he's like, wait a minute, if we take this meat that's still good, we could turn it into chili. And yeah, that's where that comes from, buddy. So yeah, I don't care if and consider it this way, me being a Native American, where they're like, none of this animal goes to waste. So yeah. I think you're being a little too harsh.
I appreciate that part of it, not letting anything go to waste. That I can understand. But then just make them into potato olays and like we got to manufacture the seasoning that they're putting on those, so everywhere has it. Then I'd be okay with it.
Totally. Totally. All right. Segway challenge. Who's got one?
Mm,
The
tough.
byproduct of this topic is another. Let's turn that into another topic. None of this goes to waste.
Perfect.
Yeah. All right. Well, go ahead, John.
All right. My ambivalence is the Myers-Briggs personality test. So, first off, I think it was created and like um I think a lot of these like psychological stuff are always like created around like, oh, like white males are normal and like
Yeah.
that's like the kind of the baseline. So there's like definitely like all the problematic origins to this kind of stuff. Um the test itself, like ignoring all that, I feel like it's interesting in the same way that like which Harry Potter character are you tests are interesting. But I think it's kind of scary when um, people take it too seriously. But essentially, for people who don't know, the test kind of ranks you on four different spectrums about like if you're introverted or extroverted, if you're um, are you thinking or feeling with your decision making, all this different kind of stuff. And then it gives you like a four-letter code to define your personality. And at my previous job, my boss had us take these tests and then we all shared our results with each other. And like she actually did a presentation on like, oh, if you're an F, this is how you talk to T, and like that kind of stuff. But yeah, so I think you guys mentioned before that you took the test, so I'm curious to hear your results. Um,
Positive. Oh,
what?
my results were positive.
Oh, good, good. Um, I'm an ISTJ. I was very like middling on like the introvert extrovert, the sensing and the judging one or whatever it is. But like the thinking versus feeling, I was like 90% thinking and 10% feeling, which I guess wasn't too surprising to me. Like I even see it happening when I'm filling out the questions. Like there was a question like, I would rather pursue intellectual pursuits than enjoy time with my loved ones. And I was like, yeah. um, so Vince, what did you come up with for your type?
Oh my God, my headphones went out. Did you ask who was what?
Yeah. So yeah, what were you?
I got an INTP
Okay.
dash A. They
Oh,
added a
I
letter
don't
for
even know
me.
what that means.
They were like, we're sending some authorities to your house right now. You tested for INTPA. So I guess, yeah, I'm not really sure. I just know it said like I'm 66% introverted, um, 69% intuitive, 55%. I'm 55% thinking.
Oh, so you're kind of in the middle on that one, huh?
I guess so. 67% prospecting. I'm an old prospector. There's gold in them there heels. All right, and then 61% insertive. What the assertive? Yeah, not all of it, baby. Just 61%. Man.
All right, and Dave, what did you get?
I'm a ISTJ.
Hey, we both are.
Oh my gosh.
All right, so you know how like with all these things, it's kind of like fortune cookies where like what they tell you is always like positive about this. So there's this website that I came across years ago, probably back when my boss made us do this, where it's called the asshole index, and it like has like a negative spin on all the personality types. So I'll read
Great.
ours off. So Dave and mine, ISTJ. Imagine an ant, a tiny little worthless animal who does exactly what its superiors say. That is an ISTJ, that is. They often switch between three expressions to maintain a notion of humanity, but really they cannot be counted as human. If you try to have a conversation with an ISTJ, you will be disappointed. For ISTJs do not have conversations. They recite scripture, or they tell you of their routine, or they argue with you, but they do not have conversations. Strongly convincing opinions
Oh
formed
my God, the
before their
truth.
teenage years, during which they rebelled slightly and regretted it. The ISTJ is likely to have a bent for the religious. They are calm individuals on account of being so lacking in everything. New things scare them. These are the people who would adapt to new speak the easiest. ISTJs do not have ambition. They are empty inside. If you happen to find yourself in the vicinity of an ISTJ, just move away. ISTJ can spread by touch, I've heard, and you will not even notice the change.
Uh, oh my God. That was awesome. Wait,
So I
What's
definitely don't
hilarious?
relate to all of that, but definitely a lot of it I relate to personally.
Some of it is spot on. Some of it is just like for everyone. I don't feel like it's just specifically to us.
Sure.
Like, it's like, oh, we don't have any personality. We don't know anything. We just repeat what other people have said. That's literally every person. They just do that. So I disregard that one.
The one that
Yeah.
stings the most. You're like, no, I reject that.
Oh,
I
and
love
I don't follow like what my boss wants me to do or my superiors. Like as I've gotten older, I think when I was younger I did, but I've grown out of that. Like I'm anti-establishment, anti whatever my boss wants me to do. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it that way.
uh,
You tell me
See,
what to do.
that one I actually do relate to because I'm like, well, this is my job. They're paying me to do what they want me to do. They're not paying me to like come up with things that I would think would be cool to do. So I'll just do whatever. I don't know. I always think of like I'm really thriving when I'm figuring out the best way to work in the environment that I'm in. And then people are like, well, how would you change your environment to make it better? I'm like, I don't know. I haven't thought about that. I'm just like figuring out how to work inside of it,
yeah, yeah. What was mine? INTP -A.
INTP. Yeah, I don't know what dash A is, but
We're mutants. We're the new wave.
I'm
all
A.
right.
I'm A positive as well.
The Germans have a word for INTPs, and
Oh
it is
God.
Besserwisser. It means someone who thinks they know better. The INTPs are sore
Oh, that's so
losers
spot on.
and
Hey.
very much adherents to the once burned, twice shy mentality. Unfortunately, as many, if not all, personalities on this scale, they do not understand that others do not function like they do. This trait is extra pronounced in the INTP, who cannot understand the idea of anything wanting to do something they have already done. The INTP adores factoids and often does not check whether a tiny piece of information or statistic is correct. They just love that it is a tiny piece of information. This gets many of them working with computers, but dumb is written in there. If you give a task to an INTP, do not expect it done. They will likely fret over completely the wrong shit and then do the opposite of what you asked. They can't actually finish anything, so they are worthless academically or
Oh, no.
professionally, but they will beat you in Trivial Pursuit. They will bloody slaughter you in Trivial Pursuit, and they will gloat about it, and they will repeat the exchange that happened when you lost. They will say, and I asked you this, and you thought it was that. And all this because of two facts that you need to know about INTPs. One, they identify strongly with Trivial Pursuit because that is their life in a nutshell, metaphorically. And two, they've heard of humor, but only in the abstract dissecting a frog way. The totem animal for INTP is a crab, an ugly foul-smelling crab who believes itself to be a princess.
Oh my gosh. Fuck. Okay, well, that's all hilarious and shit. But I want to say overall about the test. Overall about the test is that you should be tricked into personality tests. Like if they were like, "Hey, choose some movies," and then they're like, "Ah, surprise, it's a personality test." Because if you're trying to avoid coming off as this or that, I came across that where I'm like, well, maybe I was like that when I was younger, but not now. And you know what I mean? Like I would just kind of reason why it's not this. And I don't want to, I'm like, I've noticed a lot of them are far to the right on these answers. Maybe scoot it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's like what, 3 or 7 things to choose. And I was like, oh, there's a lot of those. Let's choose some of these. So yeah, but that is hilarious, that fucking the horrible turn of personality. That's great. And
One
that
thing that
is
was
I just the fact that I love trivia was brought up. I'm like, no
yeah.
way.
It is funny though, like it because then we knew each other's personality types at my last job, we always like, oh, well, they're just, whatever. And the funniest thing that I remember was the thinking versus feeling spectrum was like um it's like teaching people that like people who are high in feeling, like they want to make small talk. They want to, if you give them feedback, make sure that you're complimenting them also and all this stuff. And then like for feeling to deal with thinking people, it's just like, get to the point or whatever. And it just seemed like very one-sided, as in like, oh, the T people have to like do all this bullshit to like interact with the feeling people,
When was
spoken as
this?
a thinking person.
When was
Oh, and
this made then?
these tests have been around for decades.
Forever? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. But you think it's not on. It's just something, like you said, it's just kind of fun thing to do. Like these aren't very accurate.
Yeah, I think there's definitely things that ring true in it, but to like, actually make any professional decisions or anything based on it, I think would be a mistake.
Yeah. Well, you know what, John? Like half your face is in screen. You're so fucked off. There you go. I was like, what is he trying to prove? He's very patriotic of his state, apparently. There we go. That's a little better. Okay, but you mentioned people taking this too seriously. Like I thought your boss was like, okay, all you INTPs, fucking, you're fired.
Yeah, no, nothing like that. Um, I've heard of people having to do it like in a job interview, which I think is taking it way too seriously.
Yeah.
Um, I've never experienced that though.
Yeah, there's no way you could give like honest answers if
Oh,
it's in a
yeah,
job interview. Because then
for
I just
sure.
every time I'm like, well, what will they want me to say? Probably this. Like, what's going to be the best team player type, answer for this question? But kind of like what Vince was saying, I agree with that. Like when you're taking the test, I I noticed that I would answer it in a way that was kind of just like confirmation bias, where I was just like, "Yep, that's me," because I answered it because basically you have 4 different categories, and it's asking you like, "Do you totally agree with this or like disagree with this?" And out of those 4 types of questions, they just reword these questions into different circumstances, but it's still basically the same question. And are you introverted or extroverted? Are you like are you judgmental or like not judgmental? And it's just like putting you like on a scale from one side to the other. And so it's like so simplified that like I notice that like, well, I answered it this way this time. So then every time I get to that question, I kind of answer it the same. But like if I read a question and I do it like a hypothetical in my head, like what would I do in this situation? Like it's like it doesn't it's too vague. Like I don't because every situation is different. I feel like I would act in a different way for any type of situation, and it's just trying to box you into a certain personality type where it's leaving out all the nuance of life.
Yeah, like if you were a movie, you'd be more like Run Lola Run, Run Dave Run. Where like, you ever see that movie? It's like
No,
it's like it's divided. It's one day divided into three parts where she does something different in that one day. So it's like, oh, maybe if she did this, she wouldn't have got hit by that car. But if she didn't do that in that third part, she ended up getting the job or something. I don't know. It's a very that was a reach.
I'm not sure I understand the reference,
What?
but maybe if I was better at Trivial Pursuit, I'd understand
Oh
that.
my God. Hold on. How do we know that wasn't just, a quote from somewhere? That exact quote. All right. Yeah, let's not let this topic tear us apart, right? Should we segue challenge? Perhaps? Agree, strongly disagree. Well, I'll go then. No one come with a segue here. Um, let's see here. I'll go with my hate. I hate CTE, and that is wow, concussion traumatic. I don't remember what it's called now. I learned the letters anyways, but
I believe
so
it's chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
wow, concussion's not even in there. That's great. Uh Maybe it's my own brain made me forget that. But that's the thing that really sucks. Okay, so now it's becoming more and more in the forefront of like contact sports, football and boxing and shit like that, soccer, where they're like, oh, these people like suffer these brain injuries like from constant, any concussions, constant head impacts and shit like that, and they experience all these terrible things like memory loss and aggression and dementia. You know you could get what happened to Ali. What's the Michael J. Fox thing? Parkinson's, right?
Yes.
That's not his thing, but you get what I'm saying. But yeah, it's fucking horrible what's happening. And so now that that's coming up in the forefront, it has ruined a lot of things for me. I can't just watch UFC like I used to, like one of my favorites, Nick Diaz, he gave this interview and they were like, there is something wrong with that man. Like he is babbling and incoherent and, all this stuff with like, I'm guessing he has CTE,
I've
And
seen stuff
so
like that on Nick Diaz, and a lot of people, it's always a debate. They're like, is he smoking too much weed or is it a brain injury? And nobody can decide.
um so yeah, with all that, I mean, there's other like, well, they say that about Diego Sanchez, and he literally said, I don't have CTE. And sometimes you're like, oh, you don't want to say that. If you have to say I don't have CTE, yeah, yeah, CTE. But he's always been that weird, Like if you've ever seen him in Ultimate Fighter, that first season, he was that way anyways. He's just a weird guy. So who knows? But if you've been knocked out a couple times like he has, some good odds there. But like I said, it just kind of like ruins football for me now, even though I was kind of on the way out. Oh, and some people like there's complaints now where like what is it called? You can't hip drop or whatever now in the
Yeah,
NFL.
they banned something called a hip drop tackle, where you grab a guy by like the shoulders and then you just let all of your weight go down to kind of pull the guy down, so he kind of falls back on his own legs.
Oh, okay. But like we were mentioning how, it's like flag football now. Like you can't hit the quarterback and shit like that. And when I was watching the Super Bowl, I noticed that the quarterbacks were running way more this time because they could do that now because you can't hit them. And I'm like, "No, that's fucking, it's greasy." But I also don't want them to have to endure CTE over all this shit. Some people are like, well, the sport is dangerous. Everyone's always known that. I'm like, no, we haven't always known about the effects of concussions and shit. People used to say, oh, you got your bell rung, Junior, go back out there. But now it's terrible. It's so horrible that fucking NFL player, who was it that shot himself in the heart so his brain could be studied? Like that is hardcore, like horrible things to these poor millionaires. Poor
Yeah,
millionaires.
that's the football player you're referring to was Junior Seau. Just a legendary linebacker. I grew up watching him play for the San Diego Chargers all throughout the 90s. He was one of the best hitters in the league. He would tackle everybody. But every time he tackles somebody, like that's like him smashing into somebody, it's just trauma.
That's horrible. Oh, God damn it. So yeah, and then of course there's the horrible story of Chris Benoit, who like was it his move? He could just land on his fucking head in the ring, something like that.
Yeah, it was a
Uh,
flying headbutt from the top rope where he would just throw his arms out and just fly and basically like take head trauma every time he did the move.
yeah, in that he fucking murdered his own family than himself, like just fucking gross shit. So yeah, it's really affected the way I watch things now, and it's not. And I say I hate it because it's too bad that we're now just knowing about this, and it might take away the UFC, MMA, which where I'm like, I finally have a sport I enjoy, like really enjoy to watch and stuff, because I don't fucking watch badminton. I don't watch uh dodgeball, But yeah, I don't know. How do you guys feel about this stuff?
Yeah,
I
it's
think
definitely put a. Oh, go ahead, Dave.
I was just gonna say, I think for like MMA, like what I've heard people say is, there was like that slap competition where two people would stand there and slap each other and basically strike each other open palm to like the side of the head. People are getting knocked out. They're like, that's barbaric because you can't defend yourself. You just have to stand there. But at least with like MMA, you're able to defend yourself. You can move, you can try to wrestle the guy, you can try and dodge these strikes, and then the referee is obviously supposed to jump in if you are not able to defend yourself properly. They should jump in and stop the fight. But the referees are obviously, they're always kind of not great a lot of times, where they let the fighters take like too many punches when they shouldn't, and that's upsetting. With football, I think like a lot of the rules to like protect like quarterbacks and wide receivers from head injuries, I think they're a net benefit for everyone involved. I think there's less injuries now. I think statistically it's proven over the last 10 years there's less concussions. But it's never going to be zero. Not when you're running full speed and smashing into somebody. It's never going to be at zero. So the risk is always there.
And isn't there like theories that it's like because of the helmets, people are using their heads more in like these tackles and stuff? And if you got rid of the helmets, you might actually reduce concussions and CTE. I mean,
Holy
I don't know
shit.
if that holds up to scrutiny or not, but I've definitely heard that idea floated around.
Yeah, I've
Wow.
heard that too. Like, and I think it's like rugby players, they wear like a leather helmet, I think. And it's not like that hard shell, because the argument is that hard shell, the players use it almost like a weapon. Like if somebody's coming at you, they put their head down, lead with their head, because they know that helmet's going to protect them, and they can end up getting hit in the head and hurting themselves, or their head will hit into another player's head and then they'll get hurt. So I think there's definitely some like there's some validity to that argument. And people have also said like put like a soft you have like a soft cushion and then the hard shell and then maybe put a soft cushion on the outside of that.
Oh shit. Um, have either of you ever ever got your head banged up or anything like that? No?
Not me. I've never done anything dangerous.
Even though your middle name is Teacher.
Yeah. I don't know what my parents were thinking. So,
I'm an ISTJ, so also not me. I've never done anything dangerous.
Well, I know I gotta represent the INTP dash A. I was in football. I didn't thankfully I barely fucking played in senior year, but I did play way more in when I was sophomore. Um Never got hit too bad. If anything, it was during practice drills and shit, you know? That's probably the most I've ever gotten like tackled and stuff. But never knocked out, thankfully. I know it happened to some kids. I remember it happened to some dude and he was down on the ground for like a long fucking time and then he finally gets up and he springs up like, yeah, and everyone's like, yeah. But yeah, it was very serious and he tried to sell it like it wasn't. Um yeah, I don't know. Very, very spooky stuff, especially when it comes to the mind and the brain. I mentioned I was in the Tough Mudder and I was going through the electric shit, the vines, electric vines, and too many zapped me at once and I got knocked out. I wonder if that what if that was something, little CTE adjacent or something. I don't know.
I mean,
well,
that's
aren't concussions like when your brain is kind of sloshing around in your skull and like isn't it like the impact of the brain on the that is what causes that or whatever?
Um,
mhm.
well, yeah, but I thought, what about like in MMA when you're in a chokehold and you don't tap, you pass out. Passing out is bad for you as well, right?
No, not in that
For
sense.
different reasons.
Oh,
That
okay. It's
like
completely safe.
so like a choke where it's a blood choke, you're cutting off the blood supply to your brain. If you pass out from that, it's actually not like considered bad, like scientifically.
Oh,
Now, if they hold the choke and you don't get oxygen, once your brain is starved of oxygen for like over, I think 3 minutes or 4 minutes, then you start getting brain cell death. But as long as you're not like held in that choke for a super long time, then you should be fine. Um, the shocking thing, that's more of like a nervous system thing. I don't think that that's the same as like getting knocked out from a concussion.
all right.
So
So I'm in the
think
good.
I
Yeah,
think
you're
you
in the
dodged a
clear.
bullet.
What did I
I think
say? Did I say
I
I'm in
think
the good? I think that's the TE talking.
I think it's crazy like looking back of like how much like and like people now who let their kids play football and they're like 9 years old, 10 years old, like especially like that middle school range when you're like 11, 12, 13, because some of those kids who are like 12 or 13, some of those kids have hit puberty and can like grow a mustache. And then there's other kids who were like me who were just like a scrawny little 88-pound kid who could just get smashed by some of these people and like you can end up with serious head injury because they group everybody by their age, not their size.
Yeah, that's right. So, okay, so say, Dave, you have a kid and he or she is like, Dad, I want to play football. Don't be a dork and let me sign up. You know?
I might
Uh,
have to tell them to play baseball instead. So, like you get a helmet, just dodge those pitches that are coming 100 miles an hour like a foot from your head.
no, your son or daughter is built like a fucking linebacker. Scouts are coming up. They're like, for the love of God, man, let
That's
your
what
child
teach
play.
that's what parents do. They hold their kid back a grade so that way they're older than all the other classmates. And they're like, yeah, now they're gonna dominate in basketball and football.
Holy shit. All right, man. Well, yeah, it's just terrible. It's too bad. Do we have a segue challenge?
Let's not knock ourselves out trying to get more out of this topic.
Oh God. All right. I think Dave's up again.
Um, I let's see. I am indifferent. Well, yeah, I am indifferent to Dave Grohl, the lead singer of Foo Fighters. Dave Grohl is incredibly famous. Like, I feel like I don't know why. Maybe it's because like the algorithm on like every social media app, like Facebook and TikTok, they know I like rock music, so they're like Dave Grohl, and I constantly see Dave Grohl, and like he's fine. I don't hate him for any reason, but he's like to me, he's like the definition of like nothing special. Like he was in Nirvana, which made him like super famous. The fact that, he was a drummer in Nirvana for, like half of Nirvana's lifespan. Or well, I
Uh,
didn't mean that as a joke. Um
Speaking of head
but
trauma,
God. But and then so Dave Grohl goes to be the lead singer of Foo Fighters, and like the Foo Fighters band, I don't really like any of their music. Like Everlong is their best song, but
yeah.
it's also nothing like any of their other music. And their music is like the guitars are really good, the drums are really good, but then Dave Grohl's vocals and the lyrics just do nothing for me. They're just super vanilla. Um, I think his personality wise, I think he seems to be a really nice guy. He's got a good sense of humor. He's like collaborated with Tenacious D.
Yes.
He's got a good sense of humor, and he's super likable. And he helped with Queens of the Stone Age, which is a band I really like as well. And one thing I noticed was like all the times I like Dave Grohl is when he's not the lead man, when he's a backup singer, backup player, like a role player, then he's great. But as the front man, he just doesn't do it for me.
Wow, you covered basically how I would sum him up, and I never really noticed that, but yes, his voice is fine, but it's not special. I'll agree with that. I think he is living off of personality that people do seem to enjoy him. Um, that's because I hear more about his charity work or whatever, like, oh, he went out and cooked for people waiting in lines or the homeless or some shit, where it's like, that sounds cool. He sounds like he's a cool guy. But yeah, I think the voice, even though I really like some of his stuff, was it Walk, Follow You in the Clouds or some shit? I don't know. But it was really good. Um, Run, I think it's called. I don't know. But I like some stuff. But I think I might have to join you there with the indifference, where it's like, yeah, eh, because I've never bothered to listen to a full Foo album.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too. I don't think I've ever listened to an album of theirs, and I don't really know, like nobody's ever told me like, oh hey, you got to check out this album. Like, I don't really know anyone who's into them either.
I feel like all of their songs sound the same. So it's like I don't need to listen to an album because I'm like, yeah, I've heard two of the songs on the album. The rest of it's just going to be like kind of a generic type of thing.
Hero, that was really good. Um, or There Goes My Hero. What is that fucking song called?
There Goes My Hero.
There Goes My
Yeah,
Hero.
that's a
Yeah,
decent song.
yeah.
I don't mind it.
We
Um,
actually listened to that song a lot in the locker room during at football, where we were like, all right guys, let's put our heads together, and but not too hard, and win the game. God.
I th One song I really hated of theirs was I think it's called Pretender. It's like one of these things is not like the other.
Yeah,
Na 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 na. I don't know. It's just
He
Yeah, it
seems
sounds
to
pretty
know every
bad.
note. Yeah. Okay, but I will say I didn't care for the best, the best, the best. He's just like, oh, okay, stop. You know, he could have got away with two bests, but way too many. Yeah.
I agree. That song was bad.
DOA, I really like DOA. That seemed very operatic or something, like it could have been in a play or something like that. I like that song, but yeah, I'll go with Indifference. Why not? He played the devil in the Tenacious D movie and in the
Mhm.
music video. That's cool.
Yeah, I think that probably like put him up in my good graces. If it wasn't for that, I'd be like, nah.
Segue challenge. Let's leave Nirvana and start a whole new topic.
Oh, I think oh my gosh, one more thing before we leave this topic.
Yeah.
The best clip I've ever seen was Dave Grohl talking about when he was on Saturday Night Live and Christopher Walken was the host and he was going to introduce them and Christopher Walken asked him, he's like, how do I say your band name? Do I emphasize Foo or Fighters? And Dave Grohl said Fighters. So then Christopher Walken's like, and now Foo Fighters.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
it was just like the best little clip of Dave Grohl doing a Christopher Walken impression, and it just like it showcases personality and his sense of humor.
It's great. Okay. Yeah. Segue. We already did that. Who's up?
All
Is it
right.
John?
Yeah. My love. Last, I guess over the last months of the last year, Minnesota had a contest and thing to basically get a new state flag, which prior to that, the state flag was one of those, it's like a blue field with the state seal in the middle. Um, and there's, a lot of states that have that, and it's like super ugly. Like Wisconsin has that. I looked up Oklahoma. It's not the state seal, but it's something in the middle of a blue field. And,
Oh wow.
they just, you see them flying and you can't really tell one apart from the other. And what what's behind me is, what the flag, the winner ended up being, um, which, I'm not going to say like I think this is the best flag ever, but I like it way better than what we had before. And, it's actually identifiable. Um, there was hundreds of different designs submitted just by people. And, they got narrowed down over the course of months. And then there was like a top 5 or something. And then this one got chosen, but it was even then modified. Like before, it had in the light blue part, it had 3 stripes instead of just a solid blue. And I think like the star on the side looked a little different. But it was really fun to see what people submitted. There was a lot of, like snowflake imagery, and there was like some loons with laser eyes and like, just crazy stuff. And um, some people took it very seriously and other people did not. But I'm just happy that we're getting something more unique, and I hope other states will follow suit.
So you're saying Wisconsin get with it, like we changed our
Yeah, I mean,
flag.
this is a challenge to Wisconsin, basically.
Well, it sounds like the original version of this flag seemed to be aping on Cuba, right? You ever see the Cuban flag?
Let me look that up.
Dave, do you see it? The cute, like, he mentioned there was like stripes in the light blue part,
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So it was three different color stripes. It was like green, blue, and white, I believe.
No, that's way too busy.
And one thing I should point out is the inverted triangle of the dark blue is actually meant to mimic the shape of the state geographically.
Oh, I thought it was a
And
Pac-Man homage.
it can be two things
That's great.
So why did they get rid of the old flag?
because it's fugly. So actually, there's some controversy about that. Of course, because there's kind of controversy about everything. Um, the um, so the old flag and like the old state seal, like at the same time, we got a new state seal as well. There was some Native American imagery on it that people saw as more exploitative than being honoring people. Um, but I'm I think honestly the main reason was just we didn't want to be another state seal on a blue sheet flag. But after this was all voted on and like finalized and everything, a couple of our Republican Congress people in the state said they want to introduce a bill to stop this new woke flag from being pushed down everybody's throat. They say like this is just, too PC and we're giving up on our tradition and all that stuff. And I don't know if that's going anywhere, but I really hope that it um that we don't get stuck with the old one.
I think this is like a microcosm of like what's wrong with politics, that our politicians are worried about state flags and what's on them, like when there's so many like important issues at hand, but they're like, no, let's spend our day talking about the flags, where it's just like, come on, you guys got so much other important stuff to do. I don't know. I think the new flag looks kind of just bare and boring. It's just not a whole lot going on there. I feel like, they're the state of 10,000 lakes. Like, so it's blue in color, but I don't know. I feel like it could be a little bit more artistic in some way. Maybe show like a loon or a fish or something.
A loon with lasers.
Yeah. Um I think like, if you think about the country flags, like none of them have like that kind of shit on it. You know what I mean? It's always like a few stripes, maybe a couple stars, and that's it. Like a flag isn't meant to have detail on it. I'm trying to remember. There's like some rules for or guidelines for flags that I read a while back
I
that
think like isn't that generally for like countries? But because like state flags, like I always remember California's because it's got that big grizzly bear on it. So like I feel like state flags are a little bit more artistic and have more detail.
yeah, they definitely have been. And you can argue if that's good or bad. Like I think the California flag is great if it didn't say like the words Republic of California on it or whatever it says. Like if they got rid of the words, I think that'd be an amazing flag. Here we
But
go. The Flag Institute guiding principles of flag design. Um,
number one, must never touch the ground.
keep it simple. Use
Golden
meaningful.
triangles.
Use 2 to 3 basic colors. No lettering or seals. Be distinctive or be related. I don't
How are
know.
you supposed to be distinctive, but then only use three colors?
I don't know. The Japanese prefectures pull it off.
Wait, is that the one? Which one am
And
I
I'm
thinking?
just,
The one with the dot?
that's the country flag.
Oh, I'm a fan of that flag. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just couldn't say that around WW2.
I always like the Japanese Empire flag where it was like the red sun, but then there was like red bars coming
Oh
off it.
yeah.
That's what I'm
I always thought that
thinking.
looked
Yeah.
cool.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, yeah. And then what's the British one with the Jack Dandy or what do they call it?
The Union Jack.
Yeah, I like that version. That's cool. But again, those are yeah, it's not state. Yeah, our Wisconsin state one is goddamn dull. It's like they got a bell or something, and there's like a guy with a drum, maybe. I don't know. It's pretty boring.
I like the Wisconsin one. It's got a
Well,
beaver
yet you
and it's got like
left
a
to
sailor
Oklahoma.
and a miner. And there's
Oh,
like,
really?
yeah, there's a guy with there's like the shield or whatever. And there's like a anchor, a guy with a hammer, a guy a hoe for farming, and then
Yeah.
like a shovel and pickaxe, which is kind of similar to the Russian flag or the Soviet Union. But you
I mean,
know,
yeah, it's a fine state seal. It shouldn't be the flag though. And like, see people are making the point like a state flag should like become a symbol, but it doesn't have to have all the symbolism on it. You know what I mean? So like you don't have to shove everything onto the state flag. Just make something simple and good, and then that itself becomes the symbol of the state.
Does this flag is also reminding me of Texas? Isn't their flag kind of like this? Like a star,
Yeah,
right?
they're
Because
the Lone Star
Lone
state.
Stars, yeah, big old belt buckle on there. Or maybe it is
Um,
just a star.
yeah, it's got the blue stripe on the left with the star, and then a white and red stripe going horizontally.
Looks like Poland too. That was the
Um,
cool thing about UFC. All you got to see all those different flags. It was so awesome.
but just imagine, like all 50 state flags actually like, up on flagpoles and stuff. Like half of them you wouldn't know which one is which because it's just blue with like a circle in the middle.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Um, yeah, I don't know if we. Oh my gosh, if Wisconsin does have a new one, you gotta put cheese in it, motherfucker. Right? Or maybe it could be a yellow with like dots, white dots throughout. Oh my gosh. Yeah, just make it the cheese head, basically, right?
Swiss cheese, yeah. Like in
But
my
that, yeah.
head, I'm like, I think of like the Wisconsin Badgers, so like, yeah, red and white with like a Badger logo on there. And then I just think of sports team, like the Brewers, the Bucks, the Packers.
And the Brewers logo is so good. The baseball mitt with the ball, like making the M and the B.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
classic.
Well, then we could get into a whole thing like, who has the cooler symbol in NFL and shit. But I do like, yeah, we should have better flags. I do agree. The Ho Chunk Nation flag is white, and then it's got a bear carrying a fucking war club on its back, and an eagle carrying a fucking peace pipe. It's pretty badass. And then the Wisconsin shape is in there and stuff. I like that flag. I think it could be a little bit better, but it's fine. It's
Yeah,
just,
and it's
it's
got
just,
some cool flourishes on the sides.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't mind it.
I feel like, I don't know, I feel like every flag should just be like the outline of the state, and then they can choose like their color palette. Like if you want red and white or blue and green, or I don't know.
It
Keep
reminds
it
me of
simple.
the Dimitri Martin joke that the easier it is to draw the state, the harder it is to live there.
Wow, that's awesome. Oh my God. Okay, so
Looking at you,
while we're
Wyoming.
talking about symbols and whatnot, Game of Thrones. If you guys
Oh yeah.
what are their flags? I love. Oh my God, which one is it? Uh, the upside down flayed guy for House something. Who's that evil fucking sadistic guy who cuts off the
Yeah, I know what you're
Greyjoy's
talking
dick?
about.
Yeah. I love that fucking symbol. Even though I hated those characters, I'm like, that's an amazing flag.
Yeah, I remember back when that show was on, someone um created state flags in the style of the Game of Thrones
Oh,
flags, and it was pretty awesome.
awesome. It's great.
Yeah, is it House it was Ramsey Bolton? Like House
Yes.
Bolton?
Yep. I believe so.
Is that the
Nope.
similar?
It's yeah, but upside down and the head's cut
Okay.
off. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's so fucking badass. And then I also like the Greyjoys flag, the one with the squid.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I like that one a lot. Oh yeah, here it is.
Yes, that's so cool. Love it.
That's messed up.
It's Mr. Goodbody upside down. It's great. All right, segue challenge.
Let's make like a flag and wave bye-bye to this topic.
Um, I want you guys to choose my love or my indifferent. I love bloopers. I'm indifferent to superstitions.
I'd vote superstitions. I was hoping to talk about that last week already.
All right. Okay, well, I'm indifferent to superstitions. Again, I don't want to be bringing up my race all that goddamn time, but growing up Native American, holy fuck, do we have a lot of superstitions. Seeing an animal could mean something, like if you see a rabbit, if the rabbit, it means you gotta be careful. If you see a owl, that means someone is going to die. It's just like, whoa, shit. So,
That's a pretty common animal. Like,
well, again, that's why I'm indifferent to it because it's like, well, I raise owls, like what am I supposed to do? So we have, animals mean a certain thing. However, I don't think we dig the whole black cats are evil or whatever. We're like, no, it's just a fucking cat, you idiot. Owls is what you gotta fear. We a lot of things with the supernatural, we're really, we believe in the spirit world and stuff. So a lot of Native Americans will not whistle at night because that calls the spirits towards you. Um, I'm not okay. So, oh yeah, and then other things where it's like, is this superstitions or is this just like being polite? Where they're like, don't eat in the dark. Um, don't walk.
What?
Don't walk over someone who's lying down. Don't do that. Where it's like, I mean, it's just, yeah, I'm sure it's not polite to do that, I guess. I don't know. But there's things that I am aware of where I'm like, oh, that's not me at all. Like, I'm not a sports superstition guy because I don't watch them. However, I do understand that OCD like thing where it's like, oh, I was wearing these shoes when they won. Could that be linked? Because really, growing up very superstitious, and maybe it was just my mom's own beliefs as well, uh, where after a while, everything means everything, and you can kind of get it in your head where it's almost like your monk, that detective where he's like, oh, I don't step on cracks and shit like that. Like fucking, was it OCD or something? So is that what he
Yeah.
has? Yeah.
hmm
Um, it's that sort of stuff. I'm wondering if that bled into my procrastination where it's like, no, this has to be perfect before I could even do this thing, where all these meanings are behind everything and shit like that. Um, however, without even thinking about it, I want to knock on wood so that things don't, where I catch myself. I'm like, why do I do that? Same thing with fingers crossed. you know. Um, my mom will not leave the house on Friday the 13th.
Like for real, like she actually won't
I
like
mean, she will if she has to, but she's like, "Well, I'm not gonna like it." Shit like
yeah,
that. You know what I mean?
like
Like
she'll
she,
avoid doing things.
yeah, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. But there are some weird things like some people believe in holding your breath while passing a cemetery. But it's like,
I
what if
remember
you're
that one
walking?
when we were a kid that that was a thing people talked about.
Where I'm like, yeah, but what if there's people that live right across from cemeteries? What are they doing? Living. All right. So what do you guys have to say about superstitions?
Well, as may have come across when I was complaining about how skeptics are treated in films and stuff, I consider myself a man of science and um, don't really believe in any superstitions. However, I do feel a lot of social pressure around not necessarily knocking on wood, but just like the you spoke too soon kind of thing. That like if I'm like, oh yeah, it looks like they got this game in the bag, and then like they end up losing, like then I get blamed that they lost. And like there is something about that one like feels real, even though I know it's objectively not. Or I remember like um we were camping one time. I was camping with a bunch of friends, and there was like a storm coming in, and someone as a joke said like, I defy you to like take us down with that storm, or just something stupid like that. But it felt like outrageous that he would say that. You know what I mean? That like, what, you're really gonna call this down on us? Like, um, that stuff, like, um, I just feel like is taken like pretty seriously by a lot of people generally. That like, yeah, don't say something good's about to happen or you'll make it not happen.
How about you, Dave?
Um, I find it like super annoying. Like I've always worked at jobs, like I work in a hospital, and like whether you're busy or not depends on how many patients are coming to the hospital. And anytime, like, you're never supposed to say, wow, it's really quiet today. People
Oh
get
yeah.
super angry. They're
Yeah.
like, don't say the Q word.
Yeah.
Now it's going to be busy. And then, because then all of a sudden you'll get, a couple of ambulances will pull up and be like, what did you do, Dave? And I'm like, I had nothing to do with their high cholesterol and stroke syndrome. Okay? This wasn't me. It was their bad eating habit and all the fast food restaurants in town. Like, that's the cause of it, not me. Um, so I get really annoyed when people like mention like, oh, you can't say that, blah blah blah. One superstitious thing that I do agree is a thing is the full moon. When people say like, oh, things get crazy on a full moon. So this kind of goes between like a superstition and like astrology, but weird things do happen around a full moon. Especially like at the hospital, it gets really busy. And it's never the day of the full moon, it's always the day before the full moon for whatever reason. But I swear it's always like a day that you don't want to work. And like if you have a crazy day at work, if I go on my phone and I look up what is the moon phase, and I'll be like, oh, tomorrow's a full moon. I'll be like, yep, not surprised because it's always like a crazy day. So that one is, for whatever reason, there seems to be some validity to it, but anything else I don't really believe and don't really care for.
I almost think that I don't know, some sort of science, weird science. Hi, hi. It's because the moon is so close, that affects the fucking waves, right? It affects the water and shit because it's like some gravity thing, maybe. Maybe the gravity
Yeah.
being pushed on our brains make us act weird and shit because, I've worked with the special needs for 14 years, I think. just last week, 14 years. Um, and yes, the full moon, they act completely sane. No, I'm just kidding. They're just for once in their goddamn life. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, they get rowdy and shit like that. But like same thing with kids, right? Do you remember growing up hearing that? Like your parents would be like, "Oh god damn, it's a full moon, Vince. You're gonna be a piece of shit now." I'm like, "I'm never a piece of shit, mom."
I definitely remember hearing that kind of stuff. And what is the moon cycle, like 28 days or whatever? So it's either the full moon the day before, the day after, 3 out of 28 days. I mean, I'm just trying to think the statistics on it.
Oh, just everyone happens to let loose or be weird?
Or like if you notice things are weird, there's like whatever, 1 in X chance that it's around the full moon.
Okay, but what about like do you think there is some sort of connection with the moon being so big and shit? Or no, you're just like, no, this is just a coincidence for
I
sure.
don't know. It's just not something I never hear about anymore, so I never really
Oh,
think about it.
oh shit. Well, Oklahoma people, they're always talking about that. Full moon rising like the South someday.
What about
I
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say like I know like the full moon is like really big if you're into fishing. Like the moon phases and like how well and like how many fish you'll be able to catch. There's like a huge correlation with that. And like a lot of people they will plan their fishing trips around like you want to get like that third week in October because it's gonna have a full moon or something like that. But then like so I think there's definitely something with the moon phases, um, and what it does to our biology, who knows? But I think a lot of it is probably just magnified by like the stigma of it. Because I think people think like, oh, it's a full moon tonight, and they know that there's like, well, there's like an extra reason to just let loose and be crazy. So then more crazy stuff happens and they act more reckless and
All right, right. Well, anything else about
Yeah, I was
superstitions?
gonna ask, like, do you have like a lucky charm or anything like that? Do you
I
believe in lucky numbers?
I used to believe in lucky numbers. I thought seven was my lucky number, but I just like it. That's all.
that's everyone's lucky number.
Oh, well. Uh, yeah, I think God damn it, I don't know. Thinking s- if you're dreading something and then you get there and it's actually really nice, the opposite of what you feared, is that a superstition or is that just you psyching it up in your own head so much that there's no way that events can live up to how horrible you had it in your head? I don't know. Does that even
Yeah,
count as superstition?
I don't think it does.
Oh, damn it.
And I was thinking about Dave's example with, saying, oh, it's a quiet day or whatever. Like, um, in statistics, there's like the phenomenon called reversion to the mean or like reversion to the average, which just basically means like if you have a really good day one day, the chances are that the next day will be closer to an average day, so it's going to be less good. Or if you have a really bad day, chances are the next day is going to be more average, so it's going to be less bad. So if things are really good and you comment on it, like things are going to be not as good no matter what anybody did or said. Just like, statistically, you're not going to have above average days every single day.
Any of you guys, as a kid, try and find that four-leaf clover?
Yeah, we could find them a lot. They were actually like super common in our front yard. Like we always thought it was
Really?
something special because like my sister would find one, but then we'd be like, oh, and then all of a sudden we all have like handfuls of them, and we're like, they're not that special.
I used to fake it. I would rip the third leaf off and then rip the remaining two leaves in half.
Oh my
make my
gosh.
own
I
luck.
like it. Your own luck. That's
Uh,
like from a movie.
I feel like there's just got to be like a certain species of clover that has more four-leaf clovers.
It's that
What?
great Futurama episode with the seven-leaf clover.
That's right. Bit of a
How lucky would that
tearjerker.
be?
Okay, so let me ask you this. So, what happens if everyone does an experiment where they're like, nobody adheres to the superstitions and just lives your life? Do you think people will eventually be like, no, I have to do this, even though nothing happened? They're like, yeah, well, I got lucky now and shit. I don't know. Do you think it's so embedded in us? Because there's superstitions all over the world,
Yeah,
Is that,
I think it's embedded in us. Like our humans do the best when they discover the patterns and things. So like, if we find out like, oh, when I plant my crops in March, then they grow in, whatever region or whatever. So it's like our brains are always trying to figure out like, oh, there was this cause and it had this effect. And it does us good most of the time. But as a side effect, we also come up with a lot of shit that has nothing to do with each other that we're 100% sure is completely related.
yeah, I think I blame a lot of my neurosis on just growing up with a lot of superstitions, personally. Yeah.
I feel like there's like that patterns that you're talking about, John, where people try to like, oh, I saw a black cat and then something bad happened, where there's like that part of it. But then I think like superstitions, they kind of just took off like a almost like a meme that catches on, and then people just try to find superstitions in anything and everything. And then it's like it just you kind of start doing it for the fun of it, where you can just like point out like, well, this happened and then this happened, and then you're just trying to make correlations between two unrelated things. And if you're always trying to do that, you can find them infinitely if you're just, making coincidences and saying that it's something that is related.
Yeah, I always think about that with like people who said like their dream came true or whatever. Like you have like 8 dreams a night that are just nonsense and like you don't even think about ever again. But when something happens that then happens to remind you of something you had in a dream, like of course you're gonna note it and be like, oh man, I dreamt this would happen.
Yeah, there's something, I don't know. I'm very on the fence on whether I should try and let go of a lot of these. But again, it's like fuck, a lot of spirit stuff and I still like you couldn't pay me right now to whistle and it's 8:37 at night. Yeah,
Come on,
maybe
man.
if
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
maybe if the two of you showed me a little skin, I'd give you a whistle. All right, segue challenge.
Well, there's one funny story I wanted. There was
Oh yeah.
this physicist, I think it was Niels Bohr. He had a horseshoe, like a lucky horseshoe above his desk, and someone like called him out on it and like, do you actually believe in that? And he's like, no, I don't believe in it, but I'm told you don't have to believe in it for it to work.
He was a scientist, you said?
Yeah.
Oh, science. All right, segue challenge. Let's
Let's
walk
try our
under
luck elsewhere.
uh who is it? John or Dave? Dave.
Dave.
Um, oh, I have my love. I struggled finding a love this week, but I was watching
Couldn't
UFC.
tell. Didn't notice.
I was watching the UFC and, there's head trauma going on. That was sad. There's advertising everywhere, which is there's on the mats, like on the ring posts, all the commercials everywhere. The announcers are bringing up advertisements in the middle of it. And I'm like, that's a bummer. And just like I'm like watching the UFC, I'm like, I watch this for some reason. I have to like some part of it a lot. And I was like, I love Bruce Buffer. the announcer, like the ring announcer, the guy in the ring who like, and now fighting out of the blue corner. This is a mixed martial artist standing at 6 foot tall, weighing in at 170 pounds. And like the way Bruce Buffer says almost like the same thing every time, but it just grabs your attention because he puts so much of his personality into it, and you can tell that he really loves what he's doing. Um, he's been in the UFC since like 1996, which is like almost 30 years now. But he brings so much to it, and like one of my like when I'm watching it, I'll have it like on mute because I don't care what the announcers are saying. I don't care about like any of the interviews backstage when like the fighters are walking out. I don't care. But once they get into the octagon and Bruce Buffer's about to talk, then I turn up the volume because he gets me pumped up. He just brings all the energy, and it's just awesome. And like the fighters love him, they fist bump him he'll always say their name and he'll say their nickname. I don't know. I don't really have a whole lot to say other than Bruce Buffer is awesome, and like he's one of the best parts of the UFC.
Yeah, you were super late sending in your topics that Saturday. And when I saw him, I'm like, okay, so he's clearly watching the fights right now. He probably was eating tater tots, but he bit his lip, you know? He bit his own tongue or some shit, you know?
No, the
But
tater tots thing, that I've been waiting to use that for like a month.
all right.
Like I have deep hatred. But yes, I was watching UFC on Saturday night when I came up with this topic because it was the thing I enjoyed most about it.
So I when I first started watching the UFC, that was he jumped out, you know, because it was outrageous to me. I was like laughing. I was like, this is so bizarre. He's just putting 100% into every fucking word, but he's got that cadence, you know, like I'll remember his cadence for the rest of my life. Um, and he's just like red in the face sometimes, just like like that. And he gets every fucking fighter just like, yeah, I am in the UFC right now, motherfucker. Like that is my name. Thank you. That is my height, you know? So it's just really cool. Um, he's the brother of Michael Buffer. And I didn't know that for a while. I was like, oh, he's ripping off Michael Buffer. The guy was like, let's get ready to rumble and shit. And I'm like, you, sir, are no Michael Buffer. But now I
I
love Bruce.
I thought he was ripping him off too. And I thought it was like a WWE like stage name. I'm like, oh, he's making a joke on the other Buffer, so he's calling himself Buffer as well. But it's actually his name.
That's so bizarre that they both got into it. I mean, do you see? I think Michael Buffer is classy, but Bruce is more rambunctious and shit. And I guess it makes sense for the respective sports that they announce for. Yeah, oh, shit.
Yeah, I saw the name come through. No, never heard the name before. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be some UFC bullshit. And then I was right, but not in the way that I thought.
Did you check out any of his stuff?
Yeah, I did. I actually watched a video of like how he evolved over the years, how his announcing style. And you definitely do see him like, building up energy and like getting to the place where he's at now. And I don't know, he seems like he'd be good at that.
I think it's like very noticeable. Bruce Buffer does almost all of the UFC events. He doesn't do all of the ones that are overseas because sometimes when they go to Europe, they'll have a different announcer, and it's like drastically different, and it's like so weird. And like the other guy, he's fine, he's like good, but it's just not the same. Like it just doesn't have that energy to it. And it's the same as like watching like a an actor in a movie always playing this role. If you swap out that actor for a different actor, that other actor can be talented too. But if you're used to one thing, you only want that thing. And Bruce Buffer is so good. I love that Bruce Buffer doesn't do all of them, but he does like 95% of the shows. He's not like Joe Rogan, who only does pay-per-views that are in the continental US. Like oh, it's in Brazil, like no, too far, not gonna do it. Like the announcers, John Anik's usually always there, but then it's like a rotation of Daniel Cormier, Paul Felder, Dominic Cruz, Michael Bisping. There's always like a rotation of like announcers, and I hate that. I wish it was always the same people, but like Bruce Buffer is generally always the constant person.
Well, commentators are those other ones. He's the
Yeah.
announcer, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So is he the Al Pacino? Like, is he overacting in a way? Is he the Al Pacino of announcers?
No, because I think that's like the style of like every announcer. Like if you look at like pro wrestling or in boxing, that's just like the style that everybody has. Like every like WWE announcer from like back in the day, there was like Howard Finkel, who's like a short, bald guy who would always have this. He's a short guy, but he's got this grand voice where he would talk like this, and you know,
Hello. The
and
Seinfeld reference.
it's like the way he just emphasizes everything and brings energy to it, like that's part of their job. So the overacting is necessary. Like if you
Right.
undersell it and they're just like ho hum about it, it wouldn't be any good.
It's
What
true.
about the SNL? What's his name? Don Pardo or whatever.
Yeah, that guy's amazing.
Musical guest.
That's right.
That dude's voice, and like, oh my gosh, I loved it. And it was weird because you never saw his face. You just heard the voice.
Oh, okay. Well then, Conan O'Brien, his dude, he was pretty good. They would put him on camera sometimes. He has that really weird smell, like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, The Price is Right had the announcer guy that you never
Oh,
saw.
yeah, that's right. Was who was Johnny Carson's McMahon, right? That dude.
Ed
Did he do?
McMahon.
I knew he was like the sidekick and stuff. Did he do the announcements as well?
I thought he did. I don't know. It's been a
Yeah,
long
definitely could
time.
be.
Yeah, been a long time. Um, yeah. Oh, okay. So yes, you mentioned he loves his job. What a great job that would be. You get to watch fights for free, and you get to hype up those fighters before they fucking give themselves concussions. Oh my God.
Really, you're complicit.
Oh God, I wish we had a buffer for all right. Segway challenge?
Think you just did it.
Oh yes, I totally did. Is it you, John?
Yeah, I hate scams that exploit people's kindness. I don't mind scams so much when they exploit people's greed. It's like, oh, you think you're gonna cheat the system, you think you're gonna like, scam some money, and then someone ends up, scamming the money from you. It's hard to feel as bad for those people, even though, all scams are bad. But um when it's just like you're making someone feel sorry for you and you're telling like this sob story and making all this stuff up and um just as your way into scam amount of money like that. I don't know, I just feel is like the worst thing because it makes it so much harder for people who actually do need um help legitimately. Like it just makes them like less trustworthy because you're like, oh, that's probably not true, you're probably just scamming me. And um that could be just people you see on the street begging for money, or like people like creating GoFundMe's for like problems that aren't even real, and they just get random internet strangers to donate a bunch of money to them. Like, I hate that stuff.
Totally. Goddamn. Oh, I was okay. So I was going to mention something that is like, happens right in front of you. This happened at least twice, and I was in Minnesota, uh, being represented beautifully by the flag behind Jackie. Um, yeah, I was walking and with some friends, and a dude walks across the street. He's got a gas can. He's like, hey, do you guys have any cash? I ran out of gas. My stepdaughter is in the van. She's scared. I fucked up my thumb. Look at it. See, it's clearly messed up. And it's like, well, I've never seen your thumb before. Yeah. Oh my God, John. Holy shit, you could do this scam.
Yes. All right. Never mind. I take it back. I love these scams.
But like, it's just so much like, oh, and then this happened, and then this happened, and I'm like, this did not happen. This is not real. But I think we gave him some cash. Yeah, I think the one friend was like, okay, I'll give it to you. But we all three of us weren't really buying it or whatever. But one was making sarcastic comments, and I was quiet the whole time. But the guy who's like, come on, believe me, and he finally looks at me, he's like, yeah, I don't like you. You definitely don't believe me. Or something like that. I was like, what the fuck?
Wow.
He's giving me attitude over there. I'm like, wow. Okay. So yeah, I don't know. I think we just gave him money because he just wasn't going away, But I think it happened again that one time. Same fucking story, different dude, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, walking around Minneapolis and stuff, especially like downtown, I just typically keep like loose bills in my pocket.
Oh no,
And
really?
then, yeah, so then if someone like, comes up to me and starts saying whatever, like I just don't even have to listen to the story. I'm like, here's a couple dollars.
Go away. Go away. I'm paying you money. Go away.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, because I didn't have any cash on me, so I couldn't have helped him. I think he was like, maybe you should give me your card. I'm like, no, no fucking way.
Yeah.
Vince, I know one time we were going to somewhere like the Target Center, and we parked, but when we parked in this parking lot, we were surrounded by like a couple brick buildings, and we couldn't see the arena, and we weren't sure if we were supposed to walk left or right. And then this guy comes up and he's like, "You guys need directions? You need to know like where you're going?" And we're like, I like was on my phone. I'm like, "No, I think we got it." He's like, "Where you headed?" And then somebody said where we were headed, and he's like, "Follow me, I'll show you." And like we walked 20 feet, and you could see the giant building that's right there. And we're like, "Yeah." He's like, "You got $5 for me?" I was like, "You want money? Because you walked us 20 feet?" Like, no. Like, that's not deserving. Like, if you were honest about it and it's like, hey man, I'm really on some hard times, I need $5. But like, don't try and like give me directions and like act like I need to pay for it. It was weird. But
Yeah. And like for me, it's just like if someone's, for me, I would be like mortified to like have to go up to strangers and like ask for money and stuff. So in my mind, like if someone is in the situation that that's what they're doing, like then yeah, like they'll maybe need these couple bucks more than I do, and I don't mind like trying to help out, but it's just like I don't need to hear about like how you're stranded in town and your aunt needs surgery and whatever story that you're gonna make up.
I had something like that from an Uber driver. And like I don't know if it's real or not. Like maybe the guy was being honest, but I was in like I think it was in New Orleans getting an Uber ride, and the driver was telling me about like he's working, he's trying to get as much money as he can because his brother is like in Maryland, and his brother is really sick from COVID. And it's like it's all like possible, but I felt he was just giving this sob story about his life. And I'm like, this is like a lot of information you're giving me right now. And like, I'm a quiet person, I'm an introvert. I was not talking at all. Like, I'm not like trying to like dig more information out of him or like say anything. And he's just telling me this entire sob story of his life. And I'm like, are you just trying to exploit my kindness that I'll give you a bigger tip? Because that's what it seemed like.
Yeah. Ugh.
But there's, I don't know, there's just like no way to tell in those situations. Um, a different kind of topic on the same topic of exploiting kindness is how like after like a natural disaster happens, like a hurricane or an earthquake, like all of a sudden you'll see like stuff online where it's like donate money to this and donate money to these people who are, you know, affected by this hurricane or the tsunami or earthquake. And a lot of those like what you think you're giving to the charity, a lot of them are scams. Like only like a certain percentage of the money actually reaches the people. That's a
Yeah,
lot of
actually, yeah, that's a
exploitation happens.
great point, and that's actually more like in line with what I was thinking of with this topic, like that exact kind of stuff.
What about
Yeah.
what about when women want you to buy them a drink and then they take off?
That's
That's
exploiting your horniness.
I think it was quite kind.
I've always heard of like scams where like people would call up like people's grandmothers, you know, where they steal people's like phone numbers and identities and they call up people on the phone and they talk to, you know, like grandma who's 80 years old and might have a little bit of dementia. And they're like, hey, it's your nephew or your grandson, Brandon. Like, I had some hard times and I really need some money. Could you wire me $80 or something? You know, like a decent amount, but not a whole lot. And then they, you know, they managed to get the grandma to give like their account number or like routing number or something, thinking that they're gonna do a wire transfer of $50 or something. But then they end up just like, you know, taking all of their savings out of their account and they're just exploiting the kindness of like an elderly person and it's just like the most like sick and disgusting way to steal money. You
Yeah.
know, it's one thing because I think like morally stealing is wrong, but if you're stealing from like an elderly lady or if you're stealing from like Walmart, which is like this billion-dollar organization, well, it's both wrong. I think we can kind of justify in our heads like, well, Walmart's not really going to miss it that much, but this old lady, like, she might not be able to buy her prescriptions or food.
Yeah, but fuck the old men, right? Uh, uh, yeah, that's all terrible. I definitely hate that shit. Segway challenge, perhaps.
Can you
If you guys
kindly move on?
if you guys send me $20, I can start up this new topic. I've been wanting to end this. See, Dave, he wanted to be over by 8:30 and we're almost till 9 o'clock. So
Oh
if I could
no.
just get 20 more dollars. Okay, well, let's end with my love. I love bloopers. You know, if I'm feeling down and I need to pick me up, I could easily put on some bloopers. People cracking in movies and shit is always fun to me. You know, there's different types of bloopers. There's the people that mess up a line and you're like, oh my God, look at they're laughing and stuff like that. There's the people that just can't keep a straight face, you know, they're like, for some reason you can't do this, Rob McElhenney. You'll notice that he never says anything funny. He doesn't get people to laugh. He just either breaks a line or he can't keep a straight face. So
Like
that to me,
Jimmy Fallon, doesn't he famously break character a lot?
I think Jimmy Fallon, I think that's an act, motherfucker. Like he ripped off Adam Sandler. I think he's a total fraud, but we'll get into him later, I guess, and some other topic. Okay, but you'll get the other stuff where it's like funny improv, like Will Ferrell. All that stuff he'll come up with to get his cast members laughing. 1% of it might make the movie, you know. He just has so much material and stuff, so that's always fascinating to watch. Um, And then it's always funny for where the group of them, they're tired, they've been filming for hours, and now they're just cracked, they can't bring it together at all. That's always so much fun to watch. John, you and I, we've made little comedic skits and stuff, and I'm sure that might have happened where we're like laughs.
But we laughed and laughed.
Yes. But then it's great. It reveals something about the actor that you had no idea. For instance, Misha Barton on the OC is a huge klutz. She would always like bang her head in doorways and shit and like run into walls and stuff. It was crazy. And she's like a beautiful girl, but total klutz. That was all her bloopers. And then I have to include Michael Richards, who played Kramer in Seinfeld, hates when you crack. You could his demeanor just starts to drop after a while, and he's like, "Oh, now we got to say that whole line again," because he puts so much effort into his performance that everything is kind of figured out and ready to go, and he needs for it to feel organic. But as soon as like uh, Julia Louis Dreyfus cracks, he gets pissed. You can see it several times. So I love
Yeah,
watching
that's why
bloopers.
the Seinfeld bloopers are amazing because Michael Richards is so serious, but then Julia, she like doesn't care. She's having so much fun and it's so funny to her that she's just gonna crack up and she's having fun and she's not gonna let like him trying to be super professional or serious get in her way. She's just still gonna laugh. And then that like in chain will make Jerry laugh. And I've always thought it was, yeah, a super fascinating way to see how characters are like kind of off screen or what their personality is during the scene. But I think my favorite like set of bloopers for a TV show was a Will Ferrell one where it was from Eastbound and Down with Danny McBride and Will Ferrell, and he's like the car salesman, and it's just like they just brought him on a set for like one day to do this stuff and they're just doing like the same scene and they're just cracking up and they must have shot like the same scene for like 3 hours straight and Will Ferrell's just doing like the funniest most ridiculous stuff he can think of and it was also funny. It was just amazing to watch.
It's also a way, like, for shows that you've seen all of over and over again to get like new content out of those characters. Like, oh yeah, let's look at the outtakes. Let's look at the bloopers.
Oh,
Yeah, I feel like certain shows, if I start watching their outtakes and they're bad, then suddenly I'm like, I don't like this show. Like, I don't know. Because I've seen like outtakes of like Friends, and I'm like, this does nothing for me. Like, I didn't think the show was that funny to begin with. And then like the outtakes should really be funny, but it's not either.
Well, that's a whole other thing. Like, have you ever seen it where it's like Friends, but without the laugh track?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like horribly awkward and just like it just makes you look at the jokes a completely different way. It's like, oh wait, did that did that have
Yeah.
humor in it on its own?
Because like Seinfeld had like the audience there was live and they would laugh and they would have to like take breaks after each line so the audience could laugh. But then like Jerry and Larry decided they're like, this is interfering with our writing and our timing. So then would do certain stuff where they would just like, we're not going to have like the audience laughing at all. We're going to talk right through it, and then we will edit like the laughs in. Like at the end, you can have a laugh here, but during this other stuff, they didn't want just like the actual audience in studio, and then it became where it was just a laugh track. You don't want an actual audience; you just want the fake laughter like piped in, and it's kind of weird. There's like Big Bang Theory, like tons of laugh track stuff and it like kind of works for some shows, but it's also really awkward at the same time.
I'm also a big fan of the news bloopers. talk about when you reveal something true about them, because they always have the same speech, like yesterday this happened or whatever, but it was this African American dude. He's like, I am here talking about whatever, like, and then a fly goes into his mouth and he instantly drops the voice. He's like, fuck this motherfucker, I'm in the wilderness, shit.
Yeah, I remember seeing that one years ago.
And then
That's some classic internet stuff right there.
oh yeah. And then there was this woman where she was like talking about, like, about the East Coast or whatever. She's like, New York, uh, whatever, I can't think of it. Rhode Island, New Hampshire. And she got so pissed off at herself that her old, Boston accent flamed up. She's like, fuck, New Hampshire. That was great.
I
What
remember being
about
a kid and there was like a football VHS tape I had. It was like football and it was like fumbles, funnies, and follies. And it was just, like, whether they're like they slip and fall, like NFL players, if they slip and fall on something when it's like rainy, or just like bobbling the ball, and like guys bumping into the ref and the ref stumbling over. And it was, it's all just kind of, and they would play like the Keystone Cops music where over the background, where it kind of was like the Three Stooges or something, like style music over like these guys stumbling and like doing weird stuff. And it
put
was
in
like my
the
favorite
Looney
video.
Tunes sound effects?
Yeah, like slipping on a banana peel and
What about in the old Pixar movies where they had fake bloopers from the characters and stuff, like Woody from Toy Story and whatnot?
That was cool. I really like that. Although, did you hear like how they cut some stuff out where like Kelsey Grammer's prospector character is basically has two Barbies on his casting couch? He's like, so I can get you a role. Yeah, they cut that out eventually.
I don't know. Those always seem weird to me because I always heard like how those animators are working like 100 hours a week, and
All right.
like they all like got divorced from their wives or
Oh,
husbands because
jeez.
they're always at work, and they were just like, it was just nonstop because they had so much work to do, and the studio gives them a deadline, like this all has to be done, this all these animations. So it was like, then like the bloopers, I'm like, well, you're just giving them more work to do. Like, how much longer do they have to be there?
Oh God. But yeah, I love bloopers. I love the people that are funny and not the people that are just like, oh, I'm completely unprofessional. I hate it. Rob. All right. Well, I think that's the show, man. Like, subscribe, comment. This was a Few Goldilock Bears podcast with Vincent Cloud.
John Evans.
And David Lauer.
And did we mention to go to www.afewgoldilockbears.com? Spell it
We
right.
did now.